Well, welcome to the 700 Club, a campaign effort to dupe the FBI, and the FBI fell for it. That's how the infamous Steele dossier scandal is being described. Today, FBI Director Christopher Wray faces the House Intelligence Committee.
The committee told Wray to come prepared to discuss matters related to Special Counsel John Durham's indictments of 3 people in his investigation. So will there be more indictments? And if so, how high up? Dale Hurd has the story.
The Russian analyst who helped create the Steele dossier pled not guilty to charges he repeatedly lied to the FBI. Igor Danchenko was the main source in former British spy Christopher Steele's now discredited dossier on Donald Trump's alleged ties to the Russians. Special Counsel John Durham has already indicted Michael Sussman, a lawyer who worked for the Clinton campaign. Durham also secured a conviction against former FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith. He altered an email used to obtain a FISA warrant to spy on then-Trump campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page, claiming Page was a Russian agent. The claim was false. Who might be Durham's next targets? And how far up the ladder at the FBI or the Clinton campaign could the indictments go? Americans are used to these kinds of investigations never really going very far and not catching a big fish. But this time, it may be different. Someone who thinks many more indictments are coming is the former Director of National Intelligence in the Trump administration, John Ratcliffe.
But I give John Durham over 1,000 other documents that have not yet been declassified that I know include intelligence that goes specifically to this criminal activity that would be the basis for further indictments.
But former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarthy says he does not expect major figures to be indicted, only those who lied to the special counsel.
Not everything that's a political dirty trick or in the nature of abuse of power is necessarily a violation of the federal law, the federal criminal law, even if it's very serious.
The Durham probe is an embarrassment for some quarters of the media and the Democratic Party who used it to push a false narrative about Donald Trump for years. But House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff is not apologizing.
Let's not use that as a smokescreen to somehow shield Donald Trump's culpability for inviting Russia to help them in the election, which they did.
A name that shows up in the Sussman indictment is White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who was a policy advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign.
What we're seeing now is this multi-layer connection between the Clinton campaign and this scandal. And it seems very clear that Durham believes that this was basically a campaign effort to dupe the FBI, and the FBI fell for it.
And Turley indicates more indictments are likely. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, it's absolutely a national disgrace, and here you have the Steele dossier. It was the main document that led to the appointment of a special prosecutor, Mueller, all of the administration aides, everyone in the White House being forced to hire their own personal lawyer in order to defend themselves and make sure everything they're saying is absolutely accurate. And then 2 years of a national nightmare. How many news reports were there that gave credibility to this? But the fingers also go back to the FBI, not just to the Clinton campaign, but what about Comey? What about his being duped and then going through this whole special prosecutor? Why didn't the FBI come forward and say, this is all completely made up? Now, if they were lied to, that's another thing, and we'll see more indictments, but you would think the FBI would be able to determine if a presidential campaign reached out to the Kremlin for assistance in an election. And for this to drag on as long as it did, and then here we are years later, an impeachment later, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. History is not going to be kind to the Congress. History is not going to be kind to the FBI. History is not going to be kind to our election politics. This is a national tragedy. In other news, the nation is watching Kenosha, Wisconsin, as the Kyle Rittenhouse trial goes to the jury. About 500 National Guard troops are standing by in case the verdict sparks violence. John Jessup has more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. The jury deliberating this morning after Monday's closing arguments. 18-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse is charged with fatally shooting 2 people and wounding a third during violent protests, sparked by the police shooting of Jacob Blake. The defense claims Rittenhouse went to Kenosha armed with an AR-15 style rifle to protect property and shot the men in self-defense. The prosecution calls him a chaos tourist who created the circumstances that led to the shootings.
You're not allowed to run around and point your gun at people. You cannot claim self-defense against a danger you create.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rosenbaum was shot because he was chasing my client and going to kill him.
Rittenhouse faces life in prison if convicted of intentional homicide. Well, turning now to Brunswick, Georgia, in the case of 3 white men charged in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. The judge denying defense requests for mistrial after civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson comforted Arbery's mother when she burst into tears during the trial, all in front of the jury. Last week, the defense attorney objected to Al Sharpton sitting with the family.
How many pastors does the Arbery family have? We had the Reverend Al Sharpton here earlier, last week. Your Honor, the seats in the public gallery of a courtroom are not like courtside seats at a Lakers game.
The men claim they were attempting a citizen's arrest when they chased Arbery down in pickup trucks in their neighborhood before that deadly confrontation with a shotgun. Now to international affairs and the U.S. relationship with China. President Biden and China's Xi Jinping sought to reduce simmering tensions in a 3-hour virtual meeting last night. Afghanistan, North Korea, Iran, and human rights were among the topics discussed. On the hot-button issue of Taiwan, Biden emphasized the United States remains committed to a one-China policy and that the United States strongly opposes unilateral efforts to change the status quo, a signal that Beijing should not attempt to take the island by force. Referring to the American president as an old friend, President Xi said that the U.S. and China should respect each other and coexist in peace. And to Israel, where COVID has drastically reduced international tourism. A popular destination in Jerusalem is using the downtime for a major restoration project. As CBN's Chris Mitchell reports, the goal is to be ready in time to welcome visitors from around the world back to the city.
The Tower of David Museum stands as a citadel, guarding the entrance to Jerusalem's Old City. Some see it as one of the crown jewels of the city.
The only museum in the world that tells the full story of Jerusalem, 4,000 years of rich history. Inside this magnificent citadel of the city represent all the layers from the history of Jerusalem.
This week, the museum held a groundbreaking for a new pavilion and welcome center next to the Jaffa Gate. The Jaffa Gate serves as the main gateway into the old city of Jerusalem. With this new entrance and welcome center, the Tower of David Museum wants to increase the experience for millions of visitors to the most unique city in the world.
Visitors will be able to enter the citadel from the west, enjoy the archaeology and history, and exit through the original Ottoman gate of the citadel straight to the streets of the old city with the knowledge and experience from the Tower of David as the perfect introduction to Jerusalem.
The groundbreaking marked the halfway point of a multi-million-dollar restoration and conservation project. CBN News has chronicled this effort to modernize the museum, excavate ancient artifacts, and conserve treasures like this tower built by King Herod during the time of Jesus. Now the focus is the new Welcome Center. The construction presented a daunting engineering challenge. How do you dig down more than 50 feet next to a 500-year-old wall without making it collapse?
The engineering challenges were really unbelievable in its sensitivity and problematic, because we are building a building next to a very important wall of the citadel, which is 10 meters high, and we need to go 7-8 meters deep, and we need to make sure that nothing happens to this wall.
Kimmel shows how they met the challenge.
What you see now is a stage where we can sleep at night, because there is already a concrete wall. There are the metal beams that support and know that we are safe.
Alongside the engineering comes the archaeology, where many finds were examined in the laboratory.
It is once-in-a-generation opportunity to dig the citadel. The last excavations conducted in the late 1980s.
Notes and pictures from a British archaeologist more than 100 years ago helped guide Israeli archaeologists to find artifacts from Jerusalem's 3,000-year-old history, from Ottoman-era smoking pipes to the time of the First Temple. Those involved in the project feel a sense of history.
It's really one of the most exciting projects an architect can hope for, to work inside history and give a new, let's say, a new life to this history and make it accessible for everybody.
The completion of this project is expected by November 2022. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Tower of David Museum, the Old City of Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Using the pandemic to redeem the time with restoration. Gordon, it's time to dust off the passports.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to dust off mine anytime soon. Terry's very anxious, though. She wants to go back to Israel.
I do.
So we'll see. It's a great time to be there. They've now reopened, and one of the things you can look forward to if you do go right now is there's going to be very few people there with you, so you'll have free access all the way around. But what a great thing to have the world's most important archaeological site. That's the Temple Mount. So they're able to excavate around it. You can't excavate on it. I look forward to the day where you can, and what great treasures lie beneath that surface. And how much can we discern of the original temple, Solomon's temple? That would be something to look forward to.
Oh, you really appreciate the detail that they take with everything that they're doing that is going to be contemporary without harming any of the potential that sits there.
Well, it's like everything around.
Yes.
You have to make sure you preserve, and at the same time you're discovering.
Yeah, if you're an archaeologist, that's the dig you want to be on.
Absolutely.